Excellent. Well, hello all, and welcome to our quarterly Pearl Trial webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today as we present trial updates and hear from our HSRX Medical Director and co-founder, Dr. Z, and special guest, Dr. Ross Pelton today. Taking a look at our agenda, here's what we have for you today. We'll begin with Pearl updates by Dr. Z, which will include participant, trial, and vendor and partner updates. From there, I'll introduce and pass the screen to today's guest, Dr. Ross Pelton. We intend to wrap up today's conversation with 10 or 15 minute opportunity for question and answer, where Dr. Z and Dr. Pelton will field questions you have. Please enter your questions in the chat throughout the webinar, and then following the webinar or during our Q&A session, I'll do my best to communicate those questions to Dr. Pelton and Dr. Z, and we'll do what we can to answer everything that's asked. And just as a reminder, the webinar will be recorded and we'll share it out for future reference. So again, we appreciate it, and we'll get started. So I'd like to first introduce Dr. Sajjad Zalzala. He is our co-founder and medical director of HSRX, the sponsor of the Pearl trial. He is the Pearl trial clinical investigator and is licensed in all 50 states and has extensive telemedicine experience, being an advisor to multiple healthcare startups, including the Pill Club, Jack Health, and 4Hims. So please welcome Dr. Z.
All right, thank you, everybody. For those who haven't been here before, thanks for joining for the first time. For those who are return, I appreciate your ongoing support with the trial, and as well as our work at HSRX. Today we're going to be talking about, this is kind of our quarterly report. We like to keep people updated in terms of our rapamycin clinical trial. We couldn't do this trial without the support, help and support of the community. We're very grateful for that, and we hope to make the best of it. So just a reminder for those people who may not be aware of what the clinical trial is, what we're doing at the clinical trial. It is a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. I'd say the first of its kind, or the largest of its kind, in terms of looking at rapamycin specifically for its benefits for aging and longevity. Our current goal is 150 participants, 50 in each group. Each group or arm will be either assigned to 5 milligrams once a week, 10 milligrams once a week, or a matching placebo. And the placebo in this case is very important. It'll help us determine, signal from noise, so to speak, and those people in the research community. I mean, I don't have to speak to see. I don't have to tell people how important placebo can be for these types of things, for these types of studies and their outcomes. And also, as a reminder, in terms of the primary outcomes and the primary clinical outcomes and secondary outcomes, the primary outcome or clinical outcome would be a reduction of visceral fat by DEXA scan. Which is why we're sending all our participants for DEXA scans baseline and periodically throughout the trial. Secondary endpoints, we're looking at various different markers, looking at DNA methylation clocks of various types, glycan age, gut microbiome, various blood works of different types of bioage tests. We're also banking blood, and so we'll be able to look at various different tests. Sorry, somebody commented that my lighting is not very good, so I'm using a new webcam, and this webcam doesn't pick up lighting very well. I can fix that if you need me to. Andy, is my lighting that bad?
I think you're coming through quite clear.
Yeah, usually I have a light box set up, but today my light box is put away. I need to get a chance to set it up. So if it's bothering you, I apologize. Like I said, blame it on my new webcam, which doesn't pick up light as well. So that's kind of Pearl in a nutshell. In terms of updates, you want to go to the next slide? So of the 150 participants that we have targeted, we have 90 that are either active or in various stages of onboarding. We have 34 that are in, final stages of trial enrollment. The trial is a pipeline. From start to finish, it probably takes a couple months from the time that somebody sends in their request to join, and then another, so it takes a few weeks to a couple months to actually get them going, get their baseline test, have them do their physical exam at their local clinic, send in their blood work, things like that. So hopefully, on our current course trajectory, we'll be reaching completion of enrollment by the fall, around September, maybe August, more likely September. And so hopefully a year from September, we'll have completed all 12 months for all 150 participants. And so we hope that by the end of 2023, we'll, start being able to publish our data, assuming we don't get any wild cards here. Next slide. In terms of updates, so far we've been fortunate. We haven't had anybody drop out of the trial so far. We've had to make a few course adjustments or dose adjustments. We had one participant who requested a half a dose due to some side effects, and another one kind of paused temporarily, and we're kind of reassessing to see if they're going to be. So those are two potential participants out of the 80 or 90 so far that might potentially drop out. Of course, me and the rest of the clinical team or clinical trial team are blinded, so we're not even sure whether these participants are on placebo or not. We won't know for sure until later when we start unblinding. We also have to continue to keep our IRB, Institutional Review Board, up to date. They've been very helpful with us, very cooperative, very supportive of our changes and other updates that we've made to them. We're using, just a reminder, we're using the IRCM, Institutional Review Board. Again, they'd be very, very, very helpful for us. Right now, we don't have any data to share. We just don't have enough data yet. We haven't had enough people reach the 6-month mark in order to provide any updates. Hopefully, we'll have some data to share in the fall when we look to do our Q3 webinar update. In terms of vendor updates, we rely on various different labs and partners to make this successful. Thorne, which is a company that kind of known for its supplements, but also has a microbiome test. We're using them for our microbiome analysis. They recently announced like a new iteration of their kit. It's more of a collection change rather than any major changes to the way that they're processing the sample. So it shouldn't affect what we're doing. It's just easier now to collect the sample. We also struck finally, after months and months of negotiation, thanks to Andy and the rest of the research team, we struck a partnership with Exam1. Exam1 is kind of the mobile phlebotomy arm of Quest Diagnostics, and allow us to more easily collect samples, blood samples from patients. And we're always kind of on the lookout for other labs, other tests we can run on our participants to get the most out of this trial.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So thanks, Dr. Z, and those are our trial updates, participant, vendor, and trial updates. Any questions about that? Feel free to add that to the chat, and we'll circle back on those. I see some coming in already. Now we'd like to pivot and introduce today's guest. So Dr. Ross Pelton is joining us today. He's the scientific director for the Essential Formulas Incorporated. He's a certified clinical nutritionist, and as a pharmacist, nutritionist, author, and a health educator, he's widely recognized as the world's leading authority on drug-induced nutrient depletions. He was named one of the top 50 most influential pharmacists in the United States by American Druggist magazine for his work in natural medicine. We're really excited to have you today, Dr. Pelton, and we appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, give you the opportunity to share, and you can get started with your content.
All right, can you see my screen all right?
I'm not seeing it yet. Can anyone else see it? No.
I tap screen share.
Okay.
Let's see. How's that?
Here we go.
All right.
That looks great.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, nice to be here with you all today. I'm a scientist, but I'm also a storyteller. And today I'm going to share the story of rapamycin and the discovery of rapamycin. Actually, there's been 25 years of research, probably more now, trying to learn how rapamycin works. And my original motivation was to write a book about rapamycin. But as I really got into the research, I began to discover that there is a much larger and more important topic that began to emerge, and that's the relationship between mTOR and autophagy. And so I expanded my topic and my goal and included rapamycin, mTOR, and autophagy in my book. And actually, I believe mTOR and autophagy is providing us with a complete new understanding of cellular metabolism, health, and the aging process, and really is resulting in a revolution in our understanding of the science of life extension. So I'm sure you're all familiar with these two individuals. David Sabatini actually isolated and named first the target of rapamycin, the mammalian target of rapamycin. Now it's mTOR stands for the mechanistic target of rapamycin. And then in 2016, Yoshinori Osumi received the Nobel Prize for his discovery of autophagy. And these terms, mTOR and autophagy, are not household terms yet, but I hope they will be in the future. A couple of comments about highly conserved traits, sequences of DNA that have existed and remained unchanged for long periods of time. And it's interesting to me that scientists have discovered that mTOR and autophagy are highly conserved traits that were present in single-cell organisms when life started to evolve on Earth 3.5 billion years ago. So mTOR and autophagy are really critical, foundational, kind of a counterbalancing mechanism inside all cells that regulates metabolism and ultimately the aging process of every living cell, not just in your body, but on the planet. So a little review of these two terms here. First, mTOR, it's the regulator of work. It senses when nutrients are available to the cells, and when nutrients are available, it sends out signals that says, use these nutrients to build and grow and proliferate. And so that's I call it the accelerator, so to speak. And on the other side of the coin, we have autophagy, which in a sense we call the rest phase. And I equate it to sleep because we call sleep our rest phase, but sleep is really not a rest phase. There's a tremendous amount of biological and physiological activity going on when we're sleeping. And the same is true of autophagy. It's not really a resting phase, but compared to mTOR, which is build, grow, and proliferate, autophagy is backing off, and it's more the cellular recycle and repair and rejuvenation, and basically the ultimate detox mechanism in cells. And our cells, and in all of intimate wisdom, is able to target old damaged cellular components of misfolded proteins and things that begin to wear out, and it breaks them down and reutilizes these component parts to build new proteins and new enzymes and cellular components, or get them out, detoxification. And so autophagy is essential for combating age-associated diseases. You have to have some rest. If mTOR is the accelerator, then autophagy is the brake. And just like exercise, you can't go constantly. You have to have a rest phase to recycle and regenerate. And so these are the two counterbalancing mechanisms that are functioning inside cells. So rapamycin, for all of us that are healthcare professionals, it's an educational process. We have to educate people about these terms and what they are and why they're important. So one of the stumbling blocks is most healthcare professionals and a lot of MDs don't know what rapamycin is, and the ones that are familiar with it are familiar with it as a chemotherapy agent or something that suppresses the immune system to prevent rejection of organ transplants. And those aren't conditions that you would normally think of as something you would give to life extension enthusiasts. So we have an uphill battle. We have to educate people about these topics, and that's the purpose of my book, to summarize all this research and provide the resources and to help accelerate people's learning curve about rapamycin, mTOR, and autophagy. We have to teach people that it's effective and that it's safe, and then practitioners have to educate their patients about this. And actually a lot of patients are educating themselves and then going to their doctor and educating their doctors. But that's what my book is designed to do, kind of in one location, provide all the information that will help accelerate people's learning curves. And when I got into this research, I realized there's thousands and thousands of articles and scientific studies that have been published on mTOR and rapamycin and autophagy, but nobody'd written a book about it for the general public. So that's what I did with my new book. So this is a little graphic I created to try to express what's the relationship between mTOR and autophagy. And so for 99.9% of human evolution, mTOR and autophagy were in balance. And by balance, I don't mean 50-50, kind of like the microbiome. When a microbiome is healthy and in balance, it's like about 85 or 90% probiotic friendly bacteria and only 10 or 15% potentially pathogenic bacteria. So through 99.9% of human evolution, people didn't go to the refrigerator in the morning and start to make breakfast. They had to hunt for their food. They were hunter-gatherers. They killed animals. And historians believe that most of our ancestors ate one meal a day and spent about 4 hours per day digesting their food, and spent about 20 hours per day not eating, in autophagy. And humans started to evolve 5 to 7 million years ago, and Homo sapiens have been evolving for 200 to 300,000 years with this kind of relationship between mTOR and autophagy. Well, here's what happened with modern man. Because food is so easily available, refrigeration came online in the 1700s, and then in the 1920s and 1930s, household refrigeration became easily available. And these days, 99.9% of households have a refrigerator, and 20% of households have more than one refrigerator. So because food is so easily available today, people are eating all the time. They spend much more time eating every day than our ancestors, and so much less time in autophagy. Roughly about 16 hours a day eating and digesting food, only about 8 hours in autophagy. And so we go from Homo sapiens to Homo obese. And this has happened just in the blink of an evolutionary eye, just in the last 300 years, where refrigeration and packaging of food and preservation of food and big pharma has made food so easily available all the time that people eat all the time. So here's the relationship: 4 hours per day for our ancestors versus 16 hours a day eating and digesting food today. So this mTOR autophagy ratio is severely out of balance in most people alive today on the planet, I believe. So this is a fundamental mechanism that people need to understand and learn how to rebalance this mTOR and autophagy situation. And I've called or created this term mTOR syndrome to refer to the constant overexpression of mTOR because people are taking the nutrients all the time and not getting adequate time in autophagy. So mTOR, a fundamental cause of accelerated aging when it's mTOR syndrome, when you have a constant overexpression of mTOR. And there's a corresponding underexpression of autophagy, and that is a dysregulation of cellular metabolism. And that leads to mTOR syndrome, which is a fundamental health problem that's underlying, I think, many people alive today. So who suffers from mTOR syndrome? I've been telling and talking about for the last couple of years, we have an epidemic of epidemics. You can see on the screen here: cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, strokes, diabetes, obesity, arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, fatty liver disease, opioid, ADHD, autism, COVID-19. We have an epidemic of epidemics. Mankind is not healthy. And I think that the imbalance between mTOR and autophagy is a fundamental underlying mechanism involved with this epidemic of epidemics. So the natural ways to rebalance this mTOR syndrome and get more time in autophagy and reduce the activity of mTOR, calorie restriction is one way, dietary calorie restriction, but a lot of the research shows that the efforts for people to adhere to calorie restriction are not successful over time. People usually end up gaining back the weight. But the other opportunity here is either intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. And that's dictating or discussing when you eat as opposed to how much you eat and what you eat. So you're starting to think about more when you eat. How much time do you spend ingesting food and calories? And so several different protocols. The most popular one's the 16-8, where people consume all of their food within an 8-hour period and go 16 hours fasting. In this example, from 8 p.m. until noon the next day. OMAD, 1 meal a day, is becoming more popular. And people do 24 or 48-hour fasts. These are really effective ways of getting more time in autophagy. These are just some of the more popular programs for intermittent fasting and or time-restricted eating. I'm sure you're familiar with Joan Manick. Just a quick summary here. This was a breakthrough revolutionary trial because it was the first trial in humans that showed that taking rapamycin, or actually a rapalog, RAD-001, which has pretty much the same effects of rapamycin, in a human clinical trial, low dose, 5 milligrams once a week, was the sweet spot that gave these elderly individuals in the trial, 65 years and older, about a 20% boost in the functionality of their immune system. So this is a very important trial, having a human clinical trial that shows that low-dose rapamycin with partial inhibition of mTOR provides human benefits to the human immune system. Obesity is such a terrible problem. I've included this study for review. They used the DB strain of mice, which is a strain of mice that's selectively bred to develop obesity and type 2 diabetes at a very young age. Started the mice on either rapamycin or placebo at 2 months of age, and went for 6 months in the trial. The rapamycin treated mice gained 58% less body weight and had 33% less fat mass. So rapamycin is being looked at as a potential treatment for obesity. And also improved insulin sensitivity, which is a very important factor. Dr. Vera Gorbanova has published, or actually, I don't think it's published yet. I've been communicating with her. I asked her if she could send me this slide, and she said she couldn't because it hasn't been published yet. But she did give me the authorization to talk about her work, and I actually did a screenshot of this slide from a presentation that she did. And I think this is another very important trial. We know that long-lived animals have many genes in common, genes that promote maximum lifespan, and some of the same genes that, when activated, will accelerate the aging process. So Dr. Vera Gorbanova looked at these common genes in long-lived animals and selected 10 well-documented life extension protocols and tested them in groups of mice to see how these different protocols would affect the genes that affect maximum lifespan. And it turned out that rapamycin was number one on the list in being able to suppress the activity of genes that accelerate aging. And it was also number one on the other side in terms of promoting activity of the genes that increase maximum lifespan. So although this is not a human clinical trial, animals have many of the same genes and a lot of the same organs and physical and biochemistry and so forth that humans have, and get many of the same diseases. So I think this trial, although it's not in humans, it's in mice, I think we can equate this to humans, and because it's showing that rapamycin has significant effect on the genes that affect maximum lifespan. And I'm sure you're familiar with Matt Kaberlin, a wonderful individual, and the Dog Aging Project trial. And their goal is to look at diet and lifestyle factors that will influence the life of companion dogs, people's pets. And one of the key things about organizing a trial like this is that people's pet dogs live in the same environment as their owners. So that takes out a big variable in the equation. Well, there's a subset of the dog aging project called the Triad trial, which is the test of rapamycin in aging dogs. And they're going to select some of these dogs to be in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial to see how well rapamycin will affect the age-related diseases in companion dogs. Dosing and side effects of rapamycin, 6 milligrams once a week is the most commonly used dose, 3 of the 2 milligram tablets twice a week. People are experimenting with other doses. Symptoms of an overdose. Main thing people need to be aware of is how they're feeling. How is your body doing? But in terms of lab tests, we want to track iron levels. If you overdose with rapamycin, you can develop anemia and get low hemoglobin and become hyperlipidemic. So you want to look at triglycerides and total and LDL cholesterol. And I think that it's a good idea for people to get this baseline lab test before they start on rapamycin, and then start tracking this maybe 3-4 months later and see how they're doing and adjust appropriately if needed. Thing I like to emphasize is that these side effects from rapamycin are reversible and avoidable for the most part. So if people do start to develop some of these side effects, you can reduce the dosage or the frequency of taking a dose, and things will work out just fine. The benefits of rapamycin, I believe, far outweigh any of the possible side effects. I frequently get asked, can people take rapamycin and metformin? I believe they can. I currently do. I have been doing it for quite a number of months. I also get asked, can people take supplemental testosterone along with rapamycin? And my personal answer, I believe they can, but these are decisions that need to be made by people's physicians. So that's where the rubber hits the road. One of the things I've done in my book, have background as a pharmacist and got passionate about anti-aging and life extension. And so some of the things I bring to my book that kind of summarize all of this and help accelerate people's learning curve about rapamycin. I cover the history and discovery of rapamycin, summarizing the benefits and dosages and directions. I have a section educating people how to educate their physician so that they are more likely to convince the physician to write a prescription for rapamycin for them, and some information about how and where to get rapamycin prescriptions filled. I originally took my prescription to my local drugstore, Ashland Drug. Pharmacist looked it up and said, yeah, we can order it, but we're not going to. It costs well over $3,000 for a bottle of 100 2 milligram rapamycin tablets. And if I were to get my prescription filled for a few tablets, they'd have a lot of inventory tied up on the shelf for 90 tablets sitting there. So they were unwilling to order it for me. I took my prescription to the Rite Aid pharmacy in town. It's a large national chain, as you know, and that was no problem. Information about the cost of the drug and insurance coverage. It is a pricey drug. If you have to pay out of pocket for it, I do get it covered on my insurance with a $20 monthly copay, so I'm thrilled about that. I don't know how other insurance companies will work, but I encourage people to get your prescription, and if you have prescription coverage, take it to a chain drugstore in your area and submit it and see if it gets filled. I also have a section where I book links to all this, I think, most important science, links to studies, links to podcasts and various interviews, referenced a number of Peter Attia's podcast interviews with some of the key people like Joan Manick and Matt Kaberlein and so forth. So those are links to get people to the science so you can learn and get educated about these topics. I have an interview, a personal conversation I had with Alan Green. Many of you know him. He's got over 700 patients taking rapamycin. And talk about symptoms of an overdose and how to track your progress. everybody's different, biochemical individuality. And if somebody is taking metformin and exercising regularly and doing intermittent fasting, maybe 6 milligrams of rapamycin once a week is going to be a little too much for them. They need to track their blood levels and see where they're at. So everybody needs to do their own due diligence to track the dose they're taking and make sure they're doing all right. Here's chapter 10 in my book, just a little review of all the scientific studies I've got available to people. The best article I've found, a review article, Rapamycin for Longevity, opinion article by Mikhail Blausklony in Aging 2019. Peter Attia's The Drive, interviews with David Sabatini, Joan Manick and Nir Brazili, Lloyd Klickstein and Matt Kaberlein. Then I've got a link to Joe Rogan's interview with Peter Attia, and also a link to Tim Ferriss's interview with Peter Attia. All really good foundational information that teaches people how rapamycin works, why it works, and some of the foundational things to be considered. So if we successfully educate people about the safety of rapamycin, and if we successfully explain rapamycin's mechanism of action and that partial inhibition of mTOR and the activation of autophagy really provides health benefits, then rapamycin and future rapalogs could become the top selling drugs of all time. I truly believe that rapamycin is heralding a revolution in life extension and will achieve significant increases in not just lifespan, but health span. That's really more significant. We don't want people to just increase their lifespan and be infirm and on oxygen tanks. We want them to have an increase in their healthy years, increasing health span. So one of the little phrases that I've developed that I think applies very well to rapamycin: let's make good health go viral. I want to talk just a little bit about a couple of other topics because rapamycin is not the only thing when we talk about life extension and anti-aging science and medicine. I'm very passionate about the human gut microbiome, and the mechanism of probiotics has been misunderstood for many, many years, decades. We've understood that probiotic bacteria provide health benefits, but we haven't understood the mechanism of action. That mystery is starting to be solved. And so we're starting to learn that bacteria are just kind of worker bees, and their job is to transform food components into secondary compounds that we call postbiotic metabolites. And I've written an article called Postbiotic Metabolites, the New Frontier in Microbiome Medicine. And I'll send that or give that link later on in the slideshow here. But if you have dysbiosis, which means you have an imbalance between good bacteria and bad bacteria in your microbiome, in your gastrointestinal tract. Dysbiosis is really due to a lack of postbiotic metabolites. You don't have a good diet, so you're not giving the right food to your bacteria, so they're not able to create the postbiotic metabolites that regulate the microbiome ecosystem. And so when that happens, you get intestinal inflammation. And from intestinal inflammation, you develop leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And then you get things like lipopolysaccharides, which are highly inflammatory, leaking into your systemic circulation. And you have all sorts of diseases happening. And over on the left here, all of these major diseases all have significant number of articles linking dysbiosis to different development of different types of diseases. And I'm not claiming that dysbiosis is the primary cause of all of these different diseases, but is certainly a contributing factor to all these illnesses. So I call these dysbiosis-driven diseases because it really does start in the gut. This is a link to my 8-minute YouTube video encouraging people to make what I call it's my salad buzz, but it's a microbiome supportive salad. And so I've got 4 types of lettuce and all of these different types of vegetables in my salad buzz. And what people need to learn is the only way to develop a diverse microbiome, which means lots of different types of bacteria. The only way you can do that is by consuming a diverse range of foods that support your microbiome. And your probiotic bacteria have two primary types of food that they require. They are polyphenols and dietary fibers. These compounds are not well metabolized and absorbed. They pass through your gastrointestinal system. When they reach the colon, polyphenols and dietary fibers are the food for your probiotic bacteria. But the only way you can develop a diverse microbiome is by consuming a diverse range of different types of dietary fibers and polyphenols, because different bacteria require different types of food to produce their postbiotic metabolites. And the goal is a healthy microbiome with a diverse range of postbiotic metabolites. So there's two pieces to this puzzle. It's probiotic bacteria and food. You have to consume a diet that contains the polyphenols and the dietary fibers that support the growth of your probiotic bacteria. If you don't feed your probiotic bacteria well, they won't thrive and survive. You'll have dysbiosis, inflammation, and all the associated health problems that develop from that. Additional educational resources that I provide and available for all of you here. I'm the author of 2 books on the topic of drug-induced nutrient depletions. So here is a link for you to get a free copy of my quick reference guide to drug-induced nutrient depletions, naturalpharmacist.net/DIND for drug-induced nutrient depletions. Here's a link to an article I wrote titled Lactobacillus fermentum ME3, a new era in glutathione therapy. This is another topic I'm intensely interested in. Glutathione is the master antioxidant. It regulates much of your detoxification. It's critical for the immune system. It has powerful antiviral effects. And 2 years ago, I think there was an article published that said low level of endogenous glutathione is the most likely cause of severe manifestations and death from COVID-19. So glutathione is critical, and Lactobacillus fermentum ME3 is a very unique strain of probiotic bacteria that synthesizes glutathione. It synthesizes a lot of glutathione. Human clinical trials, people taking ME3 for 4 weeks, got a 49% increase in the ratio between reduced to oxidized glutathione. And they also got a 26% increase in total antioxidant activity. So the increased glutathione that ME3 makes also is recycling and reactivating oxidized vitamin C and vitamin E and CoQ10 and lipoic acid and so forth. So I think that boosting glutathione levels is another critical factor, a proactive step that people can do to improve their health and their health span, their longevity. I also wrote an article titled Postbiotic Metabolites, the New Frontier in Microbiome Science. And I mentioned earlier that I think that people have a real misunderstanding about the microbiome and what it takes to work. People take commercial probiotics with billions and billions of bacteria, and Americans think more is better. So there's competition. Mine's got 30 billion, mine's got 50 billion, mine's got 100 billion. Taking high dose probiotics really works against balance and diversity in the microbiome. It's not about taking high levels of one or several strains, and those are not your innate bacteria to begin with. People need to understand the importance of a diverse range of foods that contain polyphenols and dietary fibers. That's how you develop a diverse range of bacteria to get a diverse range of postbiotic metabolites. And I'm also very interested in coenzyme Q10. There's a lot of misinformation out there about coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 has a melting point that is 10 degrees higher than body temperature. So when people take many of the commercial coenzyme Q10 supplement products, the coenzyme Q10 crystallizes. We cannot absorb clumps of CoQ10. It has to be single molecules in solution. There's a company, PharmaNord, which is a patented method of keeping CoQ10 in solution. They have a clinical trial showing that they have 3 to 10 times higher plasma level from their dosages of CoQ10 than other brands. And so this is my article on crystal-free coenzyme Q10 that was published in the Integrative Medicine Clinicians Journal. And you can find that article by just doing a Google search of IMCJ, Pelton, and the word miracle nutrient. Aging and Disease is a journal And Dr. Kun-Lin Jin had an article published in Aging the Disease in 2019. And the title of his article was A Microcirculatory Theory of Aging. And I got very interested in this. His thesis is that hypoxia induces increased production of reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species in the mitochondria. That leads to increased mitochondrial DNA damage, and that starts the aging process, one of the fundamental mechanisms of aging. And so a quote by Dr. Kun-Lin Jin, he said, "Therefore, I propose a microcirculatory theory of aging. Aging is the process of continuous impairment of microcirculation in the body." And using this theory, a microcirculatory theory of aging, I think that a type of medical device called pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices, or PEMF. I think these devices are very, very helpful at slowing down the aging process, because these pulsed electromagnetic frequency medical devices substantially increase microcapillary, microvascular circulation. In an 8-minute session, people doing these 8-minute sessions with the PEMF device, it's kind of like a yoga mat that you lie on that projects these pulsed electromagnetic frequencies into your body. It increases the circulation in your microcapillaries. In an 8-minute session, twice a day for 4 weeks, people got a 30% increase in microvascular circulation in the body's 70,000 miles of microcapillaries. So this delivers more oxygen, more nutrients, more blood supply to every cell in your body. Another outcome in a clinical trial in one of these PEMF devices, the people that did these sessions twice a day for 4 weeks got an 18% increase in mitochondrial ATP production. Get more oxygen into the mitochondria, you produce more ATP and you have better energy, and a decrease in the production of free radicals and reactive nitrogen and reactive oxygen species that damage the mitochondrial DNA. These devices stimulate osteoblastic activity, so you're building stronger bones. A number of years ago, NASA looked at all these PEMF devices in the world and decided that they were really very effective. They selected a device and a company that they thought was the best, and now NASA is using this technology to build a new generation of spacesuits so that astronauts lose less bone mass and have faster recovery following space flights. This is an industry that's growing astronomically because these devices really do work well. They increase circulation, they build stronger bones. There are thousands of professional athletes that are using them. Some orthopedic doctors are using them to get rapid healing of non-union fractures. Some other applications for these PEMF devices, they reduce pain and inflammation. They're wonderful for healing peripheral neuropathy because they increase circulation so effectively. They're superstars at healing diabetic ulcers and other types of wound healing. They arrest and reverse macular degeneration. There's an eye doctor up in Washington photographing the eyes of his patients using PEMF device, and he's documenting the reversal of macular degeneration. Improved athletic performance, better cognitive function. So there's just a wide level of applicability, many benefits that happen from these pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices. So along with rapamycin, one of these PEMF devices, pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices, is very high on my list of the most important things that people can do to improve their health and slow down their aging process. Here's just an image of what these devices look like, a mat that you lie on. There are coils here at the lower leg level, coils at the hip level, and 2 other coils up here at the shoulder level. They're projecting these pulsed electromagnetic frequencies into your body. And one of the companies, the company I'm involved with, has a horse blanket, so they can do PEMF sessions on horses. And this is a thermographic recording showing the horse blanket, showing after 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, showing the dramatic increase in circulation when this horse blanket is on the horse. And horse owners have a difficult time getting their horse into the horse trailer. They're jittery and they're hard to get them up that ramp and into the horse trailer. they now put this blanket on the horse and do a PEMF session on the horse for a little while, and it takes them from a sympathetic activated nervous system into a very relaxed parasympathetic nervous system, and in a more relaxed state they can get them in the horse trailer easily. And it does the same thing for humans. Humans are in a sympathetic go, go, go nervous state most of the time. Doing these PEMF sessions takes you into a very deep, relaxed parasympathetic state. And at the same time, it's increasing circulation in your 70,000 miles of microcapillaries. So there's some significant health benefits from these devices. If people want some more information about this, get in touch with me at rosspelton70@gmail.com. I've got a ton of information about pulsed electromagnetic frequencies and their health benefits. These people are what I call game changers, people whose ideas or products have benefited virtually every people on the planet. Rapamycin is a major game changer. Rapamycin has the potential to improve the health and delay the onset of health-related diseases in virtually everybody on the planet, because food is so easily available today and people are eating so much more regularly throughout the day, spending more time eating and less time in autophagy compared to our ancestors through 99.9% of human evolution. I think most people alive today can benefit from rapamycin therapy. People that are likely not to benefit, people who are already in hospice or people who are on life support. But most people alive today can benefit from rapamycin. I do not advocate using rapamycin in younger individuals. Children and young adults are still going through a rapid growth phase, so you don't want to suppress mTOR in younger age people. But I think about age 30 or 40, people can seriously start to consider using rapamycin and slow down the onset of age-related diseases and increase their health span. I probably won't be alive to see the benefits of this in 50 years, but I think it'll be significant. So thanks very much for your interest. If you do read my book and like it, please consider writing a review. Lots of little comments make a big difference. Help me spread the word about rapamycin. I'm passionate about health, and everybody deserves to have a healthy, happy life. And with people suffering from an epidemic of epidemics, we can make a big difference in people's lives with rapamycin. And so let's make good health go viral. Thanks for your interest, and I appreciate your time and being online today. And I'll turn it back to Andy and see if we've got any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Pelton. Very insightful, and appreciate your thoughts. Before we jump into the Q&A, I want to give Dr. Z an opportunity to reference the rapamycin registry, University of Washington study. I will include a link in the chat for anyone as Dr. Z is speaking to it.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thank you, Ross, for great information. I mean, I've read some of your books. You've been a great inspiration to a whole generation of healthcare providers. So greatly appreciate the opportunity for you coming on. You spoke about patients asking their physicians for rapamycin, and hey, if you can find a physician that's willing to do that for you, that's great. We don't currently offer that at our telemedicine site for a variety of different reasons. One of it has to do with some unknowns in terms of dosing and safety that we're still working through, which is why we're doing this clinical trial. But if you do happen to be on rapamycin through whatever means you're getting it, whether it's your local physician, or other means, we are encouraging everybody to join a registry. It's put on by the University of Washington. Matt Kimberlin there. We collaborated with him on getting this registry up and running. And basically it's a way for us to collect information on patients currently taking rapamycin so we can understand it a little bit better, gain better insights into it, and make it more widely available. So anybody out there who's currently taking it or plans to take it, it's very important that we ask that everybody who can possibly, join the registry, go ahead and join the registry, please. Andy, are they currently enrolling still for the registry, or are they on did they kind of, are they reopening that later?
So what appears the status of it is that it's currently closed, but are looking to roll out a next iteration of the registry later this year. So found on the URL that I sent is an email address that you can reach out to and express interest.
Yeah, so it's rapamycinstudy.org, all one word, rapamycinstudy.org. And for those who didn't get a chance on the first round of their registry, you can go ahead and email them, and I'm pretty sure they'll let you know when the second round opens up. Like I said,
Dr. Z, can I jump in with a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
I encourage everybody to sign up for the forum rapamycin.news, and they have a listing there of doctors who are prescribing rapamycin. And there are several doctors who are willing to do telemedicine visits. So if you can't find a local physician who's willing to write a rapamycin prescription, there are some doctors who are doing telemedicine visits. And also a number of people are ordering rapamycin from generic drug companies overseas, specifically from India. And a lot of those people are successfully getting their shipments of rapamycin through customs without being confiscated. And it takes like 6 or 8 weeks for those shipments to come, but they have been coming through. And so I've been following reports from people who successfully get rapamycin from overseas generic drug companies.
That's kind of what I was alluding to in terms of, we don't, for anybody who's getting it, through any means, we encourage them. Now, of course, I can't actively encourage somebody to go out and get it from one of these Indian or international pharmacies. Part of the reason is I think there have been some tests done, and you have to be careful in terms of the quality. A lot of these pharmacies don't undergo FDA checks and things like that. And so, some of them I've heard are reputable. I mean, and provide good quality, but I can't really vouch for any of them. I do know there have been some questions about the integrity of some of these medications that come through. All right, Andy, you want to start going through some of these questions?
Yeah, apologies we didn't leave more time. A lot of good questions here, but I'll propose a few questions. Maybe Dr. Z, if you want to take first answer, and keep it short if you don't mind. Dr. Pelton will.
I'll grab the first one here. Actually, this kind of segues right into what we were just talking about. So question of whether rapamycin should be enteric coated. So the commercially available rapamycin that you'd buy you'd get at a drugstore here in the US has a special coating or formulation that does enhance the bioavailability. And we're in the process of undergoing some testing to see how that translates to various forms of the compounded and whatnot. So that is an issue that we're actively investigating, and it's part of the reason why I kind of bring up the warning on some of the ones some of the rapamycin preparations you might find at international pharmacies. Like I said, I can't really vouch one way or the other whether or not they have that same bioavailability coating. The other part about that is we're not actually sure how important that the bioavailability is. You would think that, okay, you need some rapamycin to get into the circulation in order to have its effect, but there's also this question about how much of rapamycin's effect happens in the intestine. And so again, that's kind of a little bit of an open question that we hope to be able to tackle in a future study, either kind of on a wide scale like this, like the Pearl trial, or maybe a smaller scale, and we scale it up from there.
I'll jump in with a comment here also. A couple of things have really interested me about rapamycin. First of all, Pfizer obtained FDA approval to produce rapamycin in a nanoparticle size. That was the first ever FDA approval for using nanotechnology to market a drug. I've talked to representatives at a couple of the Indian companies that are producing generic rapamycin. They are not using the nanoparticle technology. I don't know how much difference it makes in the absorption and the ultimate plasma level and so forth between the nanoparticle size in the brand name Rapamune versus the generic brands. We're on a new frontier here, and there's just an enormous amount of information that hasn't been tested and evaluated yet. I do know that some of the Indian drug companies have really stepped up their game. They're marketing a lot of drugs to the United States, and they recognize some of the standards here in the United States. So I think they're doing a fairly good job at producing a good product.
Yeah, we're actually, I mean, we haven't really publicized this much, but we're working on work, on testing various different preparations of rapamycin and its bioavailable. It actually thanks to you and some of your work that you've done.
And ultimately, it's not just the solubility and the absorption of it. How well is it transported across cellular membranes? And that's another whole area that needs to be evaluated. Is there a difference between nanoparticle size technology for Rapamune versus the generics, and ultimately the bioavailability across the cellular membranes?
Excellent. Thank you both. I think we may only have time for one more question. I'm just going to go in order here. The second question, or I guess let me preface that all these questions I'll export and pass along to Dr. Z and Dr. Pelton if they have time to get to them after hours or over the next few weeks. Perhaps we can reach back out with some answers to these. The second question was a discussion around individuals who use rapamycin and are also type 1 diabetic.
Want to take that, Dr. Z?
Yeah, I can't really say for sure. I'm not yet sure how rapamycin will interact with autoimmune conditions. I mean, I've quite a bit of experience using low-dose naltrexone for autoimmune conditions, and I think there's probably going to be some overlap between LDN and rapamycin, but right now I don't really have much in the way of insights on type 1 diabetes or any autoimmune condition and rapamycin. Ross, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'll make a couple comments. I've had some questions along this line. I don't know the answer about type 1 diabetes. I haven't seen anything written about it, anything published about it. One of the most common side effects with rapamycin is aphthous ulcers. I was on a presentation last week of a group of medical doctors, and somebody asked, are people who are immunocompromised more likely to be the ones that develop these aphthous ulcers? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a good question. I was also asked if a patient with active cancer can safely take rapamycin. I don't know the answer to that. My personal opinion is I think it would be helpful, but I can't make that decision for people. And another question was, what about people who are bulimic or anorexic? Is it safe for them to take rapamycin? And again, great questions. I don't know the answers. I don't think they've been studied, but ultimately what I know about rapamycin is that when you start to rebalance the mTOR autophagy counter-regulatory mechanisms inside cells, every single cell in your body starts to work better. So some people say, well, rapamycin sounds like a magic pill. It is. Everything starts to work better. So you'll find that all these different types of problems will over time start to improve. But things like bone on both osteoarthritis, or somebody's got an aneurysm that's about ready to pop, rapamycin is not going to make much difference in those types of conditions. But for metabolic conditions, it will make a big difference in just about every kind of dysfunction, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is definitely there. I think, we're learning more and more that rapamycin can benefit a wide range of inflammatory conditions, potentially immune conditions, but it's still a new frontier. And I think, we'll be learning more and more. Like I said, it almost reminds me of low-dose naltrexone in many different ways. It's like, we're now at rapamycin where low-dose naltrexone was, 10, 15 years ago, where, we didn't really know much about it, but we know a lot more about it now, and it's more widely used. So I think in the next, 10, 15 years, maybe sooner, with progress accelerating the way it is, we might have some of the answers soon. And that's part of the reason why, the success of the Pearl trial is very important. Yeah. It'll help us answer questions like, how well do healthy people respond to, in terms of, blood counts and immune counts and some of the side effects and things like that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for those answers. Dr. Pelton, I appreciate the time. We appreciate the time and you presenting all of that excellent information. Dr. Zazala, appreciate you joining and providing an update from the perspective of the clinical investigator on this trial, and all attendees. Very much appreciate the hour spent with us. Again, I apologize we didn't get to more questions. There's just so much information to talk about as it relates to this topic. So I've exported all questions. I'll send them out to our panelists today. to get some additional answers. And you can keep an eye out for this recording. We'll send it out as soon as it loads into our library, so you can revisit it as you wish. So thanks again, all, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.